Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to talk to you today because there's a very great event which has happened yesterday, and which is that we have a second video and article, this video and an article coming out, which is by the newly founded, which we founded it more or less yesterday. It's the Army of Shambhala warriors. The Army of Shambhala and the Shambhala warriors. And this is the ancient 4,000-year-old army which has arisen from the past. 9 centuries before Buddha, which makes Christian years are 2,000 till Jesus, and Buddha was 500 years before Jesus, and 900 years before that was the first king of Shambhala. So I'll get back to that in another video because that's a very interesting subject, which is the succession of kings of Shambhala, which started 3,400 years from now. And not exactly 4,000 years, 3,500, but it's about that. I mean, so I've been creating this movement and this army and talking about it for a long time, but the real launch is now. It was yesterday. So, and this is the first video. So this is a big celebratory, an important date is today. So anyways, this is the video. It's up now. And I'm going to put, this is the article, and I'm going to put this video in a couple of minutes. So here is the king of Shambhala, who is, he's prophesied, he is the last king of Shambhala. It's called Rudra Chakran, or Rudra Chakran. So this is the article right here. So this is the Army of Shambhala is an army which will come out of it's been in occultation. It's been invisible. It's been invisible since what I said, 3,500 years, 3,400 years. And the prophecy is that here, the Kalachakra is the teaching about this Army of Shambhala. The Kalachakra end times prophecy predicts the great final war, which will see the victory of goodness. Can you people see that? The victory of goodness over evil. But all these words are used, are figurative and not literal. So when we talk about final war, people can interpret war as meaning like, the war in Iraq or the war in Syria. It has nothing to do with that. This is, the Buddhism is a religion. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the war. It's the same thing in the Bible, the apocalypse. People say that the apocalypse is the revelation of the truth. So people think the apocalypse sounds like it's going to be an atom bomb or some kind of conflict, but that's not what it's about. It's about the revelation of the truth. It's the same thing with what I'm talking about. The Army of Shambhala is like, we can say, an army of religion. So it's not an army of weapons and soldiers. So so the Buddhist view, you can see that here, the Buddhist view is that this will happen by a spiritual process and not a physical process. There's nothing physical. And it's the same thing in the apocalypse. People think there's atom bombs and this and that and weapons and soldiers and everything. No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do with the fact that you just look at the Bible, it's written there. It's written the same thing in Tibetan Buddhism. In the apocalypse, you have the revelation of the truth. And then you also have the Last Judgment. And that's where the apocalypse comes in, where all this fear of doom and devastation and death. That's where that fear comes from. The fear comes from the explanation of the Last Judgment. What is the Last Judgment? The Last Judgment is that when you are confronted to a judgment and somebody tells you you've done something wrong, like you go to the courthouse and you stand before the judge and he takes his hammer, he pounds down the hammer. He says, "You're guilty." That is the moment when you know that there's no more hope. And that is a feeling, a sinking feeling, and a feeling of desolation and despair. And that's where people associate that with the same feeling as if you were in a war and you were killed and suddenly you just became nothing and dead. And that's where that fear comes from, but it's not the same thing. Being in front of a judge and he takes his hammer, he hammers it down, he says, "You're guilty." That is not the same. It's the same, except that that's not the punishment. Whereas the punishment will be like the judge says, you go to jail or whatever. Whereas in the apocalypse, there are two choices: either it's hell or it's heaven. So people think that's much worse because there's no chance of a jail. You go to a jail now and you get TV and you get a bunk and you get 3 meals a day. You get hot water, cold water. I mean, you going to jail is almost like you get a free hotel for the rest of your life. But in the Buddhist apocalypse, great final war and final judgment, and in the Christian one, it's not like going to a jail where you have some bunk waiting for you. It's either you go to heaven, and then then there is no food, there's no anything. You're just in pure light. You're just in pure happiness all the time. You have no suffering. That's what it is, no suffering, heaven. Or else you go to hell, and then everybody knows in Buddhism we have a hot hell and a cold hell. So people are going to be in intense suffering from cold or intense suffering from heat. And then there are all kinds of other hells. The description of the hells is very complicated. There's some hells where it's like you get cut up into pieces every day, and your body comes back together, and the next day they cut you into pieces again. But you can look at the Greek mythology, and there's exactly the same thing. There's one god, I'm not sure, I think his name is Prithia or something, Prithia. Every day, his suffering, a lot of sufferings in the Greek mythology, which is very close to the Christian mythology, because Greece and the Christian is very, very close. He's tied up on a mountain, I think. I can't tell you exactly, but I've read it several times. And every day at dawn or in the evening, there's a vulture who comes from the horizon. He's where he randomly comes and flies up to him, and he eats his liver. And that's terrible. Terrible to have your liver eaten. That's once a day. And he flies off with his liver. And the liver grows back during the day or in 24 hours. Then he comes back and there's another suffering, which is one who pushes a boulder up the hill. And that he's done so much effort. Then it falls down again. And then he has to push it back up. There's so many sufferings which are actually like hell. So that these people are really suffering all the time. It's just a continuous suffering. If you have no liver, you suffer all day. And it grows back, and then they take it away. And if you push a boulder all the way up the hill, and it falls down again, that's a suffering. So that's why the apocalypse is described as terrible. And it is terrible. I'm not saying it isn't terrible. But what I'm saying is this is all spiritual suffering. This is a mind. This is what's going on in your mind. Because in Buddhism, we say that the outside world is a reflection of you, of your mind, the way you see the world. That's the definition of Buddhism. In Buddhism, we don't say that there's a God who created the world and all that. So, we're saying what it says in this Shambhala teaching and let's say the Kalachakra teaching. Kalachakra is the teaching of Shambhala. Shambhala is the land, and Kalachakra is the teaching. So, what it's saying basically is that at the time of this judgment, every person, all the people on earth, will experience that terrible suffering of being judged. last judgment for their sins. And it says that there is in Tibetan Buddhism, I'm going to explain that now, there is a demon king who's called Krinmati. His name is Krinmati. And he is the head of the evil army of the non-believers. Whereas the king of Shambhala, he leads the army of the believers. So you have two armies, one good army and one bad army. The army of non-believers led by the demon king Krinmati, and the army of believers who is led by the king of Shambhala. And his army is the warriors of Shambhala. So they're bringing this truth, and that's what we're doing with this article today. So let's go on a little bit. As I just said, it's all in the mind. It is not a literal meaning of a real war with army and soldiers. So Buddhism is a religion of peace and does not have the technical term holy war. We don't even have that. That holy war does not exist in Buddhism. And Buddhism and Hinduism have never carried out wars. There have never been any wars with Buddhism and Hinduism. That's very important to understand, because people think this is about actually killing people. Buddhism doesn't kill people. It's against Buddhism to kill people. Buddhism does not kill people. So the ancient army of Shambhala rises from occultation. Occultation means from it's invisible and hiding, to rise and rule the world. So it comes forth from its invisible state and it rules the world. It's prophesied. It's the same as the Christian. The Christians say that after the apocalypse, there's the New Age, and the New Age lasts for 1,000 years. It's the same thing with the Buddhist Kalachakra. It's prophesied by the Kalachakra teaching of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism but whether it's Buddhism or whether it's Christianity, it's the same story. It's a story about fighting against non-believers, against evil people, against sinful people. That's the only difference. There is no difference. There's no difference. It's the same people, good people fighting against bad people. Fighting against liars, sinners, killers, murderers. There's good people fighting against them. We're the white army. They're the black army. So, to defeat the demon king Krinmati in the great battle of the end times. So, I said the black army. That has nothing to do with the color, with Obama's color. That has nothing to do with it. I say black in the meaning of black and white, good and evil. So, Tibetan Obama fits the description. Obama is also revealed by the Christian Apocalypse Omen of 666, the mark of the beast, and the number of the Antichrist. Obama fits that because he is marked by 666. I've talked about that a lot, and I'm going to talk about that some more later on. Now, here is a direct quote from the Tibetan book of Kalachakra. It says, "From their capital in Delhi, their king, Krinmati, will attempt the conquest of Shambhala in 2424 CE." Remember that date very well, 2424, because I'm going to get back to that right away. 2424. So we're in 2014. 2424 is in 400 years. So they say, yeah, the king of Shambhala, the last king of Shambhala, the Messiah, he will come in 2424. No, that's wrong, and I'm going to explain to you why. The commentaries suggest that Krinmati will be recognized as the Messiah Mahdi. Now, I don't, this is, okay, this guy who wrote that, he said it suggests, the commentaries suggest that Krinmati will be recognized as the Messiah Mahdi. Now, that's his interpretation. We don't have to take that into account. Krinmati, the commentaries suggest that the Krinmati will be recognized as the Messiah Mahdi. Messiah Mahdi. That's very ambiguous, because the Messiah Mahdi, is the Messiah for the Muslims. So the commentaries suggest that Krinmati will be recognized as the Muslim Messiah. Okay, let's just keep that on hold. Let's say that the commentaries suggest it. No, we can work our way through that later on, because I'm just making this video here. I can't get into too much detail, but this commentator tries to pit Islam against Buddhism or the rest of the world. I'm not going to go there because I consider Islam to be the evilest thing on earth. But in the case of Obama, nobody can say he's 100% Muslim. Obama is Muslim, Christian. He has Jewish family. And he also has Hindu amulets. Obama has the faith, which you can see if you look at a guy like Bob Marley or the Rastafaris, they mix all religions, Jewish and Christian and Muslim. They mix everything together, and they're fine with that. They don't have any real religion. Well, they consider what they have as real religion. It's a mix of everything. And you'll find that, and so we can't single out Islam, because for Obama, if you say, "Are you Muslim?" he says no. You say, "Are you Christian?" he says yes. Are you Jewish? He says no. But his name is Muslim. He's part Christian. He has all this Jewish family, and plus he worships these Hindu amulets. Or if he worships them, he carries these Hindu gods around with him. So it's very mixed up. So we're going to keep this line on hold for the moment. I'll get back into that later in other videos. So it says the 25th Kalki, which is the 25th king of Shambhala. His name is Chakra. Will then invade India and defeat the non-Indics in a great war. But you have to remember that this is not literal meaning. This is metaphorically. This is figurative. So this is not talking about India. This is not talking about defeating an army. This is talk about one guy attacking, like spiritually, or taking power in the world. And you look at Obama. He's the Lord. He's the head of the world. And then the other one's pushing back with a spiritual point of view, because this, like Obama has some kind of spiritual point of view, but he's also a liar, and so people don't want that. So the others, look, King of Shambhala, he's not a liar. He speaks straight. He speaks straight, thinks straight, and he is very upright person, moral person. Pushes against him. So, anyways, his victory will mark the end of Kali Yuga, the age of disputes, during which the Dharma means Buddhist practice, during which the Dharma practice will degenerate. And you can see that religion now has degenerated. Afterwards, a new golden age will follow, during which the teachings will flourish, especially those of Kalachakra. So this is a quote from Tibetan books about the Kalachakra. But I am not agreed with this author, the guy who wrote this, when he talks about Islam. It's very fuzzy, mixed up, wishy-washy. Nobody can figure out what he's getting to. Plus, this guy is a Jewish. This guy who wrote this is Jewish, and he has a very particular interpretation when it comes to Israel and the Jewish rule, because I think this guy unfortunately imagines that Tibetan Buddhist Kalachakra is going to come to save Israel. That's just like fiction. That's like comic book religion. So anyways, so we've gotten so far. Now, I'm going to give a little presentation about me, who I am. My name is Gare Smith. I go by the handle King of Shambhala. I'm American. I came to live in France when I was 7, and I won't talk too much about my life at all. I can get back to that later. Well, I lived in Paris from 7 until 1990, until the 90s, and I've lived in France for 51 years, and I went to school in France, so I learned the French language. So it's my native language. Well, I speak it fluently. I speak English, French fluently. I speak Norwegian fluently because my mother is Norwegian, and then at school I picked up German and Spanish, and then at university I went to Tibetan and Tibetan language and culture for 5 years. I did 5 years of Tibetan language and culture. Then I did 28 years of research after university on Kalachakra, what we're talking about. This is my field. This is my particular field. And since after I finished that research, I started talking about Kalachakra and spreading news about the Kalachakra on internet. And actually, I felt that the apocalypse, the Great War, was looming. It was coming. It was coming. I knew it was coming because I did a lot of meditation and spiritual practice, and I had that awakening that it would happen. I did a meditation retreat which lasted 8 months. 8 months is a long time. I did 8 months of meditation retreat on a Tibetan Buddhist deity which is called Naljorma, or in Sanskrit it's called Vajra Yogini. I did 8 months of that, and anyways, after all this practice and the study is very important. Those 28 years of research gave me a very clear picture of the deity Kalachakra and the lineage, its history, and everything leading up to this apocalypse. So I was searching for this Antichrist figure, which we call the Demon King, Krinmati. And but I was just in the Buddhist circle. I wasn't on websites like Before It's News. I was just on these Buddhist. We have a lot of Buddhist forums. I only went to Buddhist forums. That's all. You can't talk. I was saying I can't talk about Kalachakra. So for me, it's kind of strange to be out here talking to a wide audience about a Buddhist god like Kalachakra. I feel very strange because I was on these small Buddhist forums for years. For several years, maybe 5-6 years. I can't remember now, because the 6 last years have been completely absorbed and have been disturbing for me because I'm talking about a guy who is not Buddhist, Obama. And why did I do that? It's because I saw a Newsweek article which is Obama, the Antichrist, and they talked about the 6-6 draw in the lottery of Chicago in Obama's hometown on the day after his election. They said, well, it looks like Obama's the Antichrist. And right, so I'm not going to get into that. I got into that in the last video, but the Buddhist apocalypse prophecy and the Christian apocalypse prophecy, they come together. It's the same thing. So I realized that when I saw it, I said, hey, this is the Christian Antichrist. So I did my research, and yeah, I saw it. They fit with the Buddhist apocalypse. So I said, okay, he is Krinmati, actually. They call him the Antichrist for Christians. We call him Krinmati. So that's how I explained that in my previous video. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm absorbed in that since 6 years. This article is made by a good friend called Jaywill, who is the person who is now making these articles, and he is a warrior of the Shambhala, warrior of Shambhala, and he joined the army just 3 days ago, and we've just been hitting it straight. We just hit the ground running. We have not taken a break at all. So I'm introducing Jaywill. His name is Jaywill. You can see him at Before It's News. You can comment this article, and we're welcome. And if any of you people want to join our army, come and join us. Now I'm going to finish this to explain that I don't agree with the Dalai Lama, because the Dalai Lama is, he says one strange thing, and the people who follow the Dalai Lama, you can often hear things that he says that the apocalypse will happen in 400 years, because what they've done is they've taken the list of kings from of Kalachakra. No, the list of the lamas, of the teachers who were teaching the Kalachakra, and they calculated how many they had. Maybe they had 100 or they had 70 teachers who were passing down this teaching, and they count 25 years for each of them, and they add that all up and then get to the date, which is 400 years from now. And they say, okay, at the end of that teaching, it'll be the apocalypse. But at the same time, there's these kings. There are these kings who are the representatives of this teaching. So you have the teachers on one side, then you have the kings on the other side. But what they've done is that they have realized a thing with these teachers, that it was all jumbled up. The names of the teachers did not fit. Something wrong with it. So here's the page about the Kalachakra right here. You can see this is the Wikipedia page of the Kalachakra. And they explain that the teachers all the names are jumbled up, and a lot of the names are not real names because they are actually synonyms. Synonyms means the same name in a different form. Like, for example, it's like nicknames. Synonym is a nickname. So what they say here, you can see it here. Here, in this chapter here, Chilupa Kalachakrapada. You can see it here, Chilupa Kalachakrapada. That's where you can find it. You go down to the second paragraph here. In both traditions, the Kalachakras related commentaries often. Okay, it starts here. Scholars such as Helmut Hoffman have suggested they are the same person. I lost that here. Scholars such as Helmut Hoffman have suggested they are the same person. He's talking about Chilupa and Kalachakrapada. Those are two names. The first masters of the tradition disguised themselves with pseudonyms. So the Indian oral traditions recorded by the Tibetans contain a mass of contradictions. Okay, now think about that for a second. The first masters of the tradition of Kalachakra disguised themselves with pseudonyms. They used nicknames. They all did this. There's one master who used like 4 or 5 pseudonyms, nicknames. And so you see the teachers, this teacher gave the teaching to the next teacher. Then they figure out that this guy had 5 pseudonyms. So how does the tradition go on when you find that this guy at different times he gave it to different people? So you imagine, okay, maybe this guy had 5 teachers, right? So it's quite logical. I said teachers. No, I mean students. If you have one teacher and he had 5 students, and those 5 students, they went up and set up schools and set up these teaching centers. Each of them wanted to have their own brand, like they wanted to be McDonald's or Burger King, so they didn't want to fight together. So they said, okay, for my teaching, I'm going to call my teacher another name, because they wanted a brand, like if you have cars, like General Motors has different brands, like Oldsmobile, Pontiac, whatever, for the models. So one teacher could create the same teaching, basically, to 5 students, but they wanted to call the model a different name. But they also wanted to have their own teacher too. They didn't want to have the same teacher. They didn't want to use the name of the car maker, like the original. They didn't want that. Like, it would be too complicated if they wanted their students, their own schools, to be really separate. So they called their teacher by a different name. I don't know if people can imagine that. But look at the Christian church. How it's mixed up. How it's mixed up with these traditions, and people come from one master. The Jesuits and the Catholics and the Protestants is all jumbled up, and they're always fighting. So you can imagine that there was a rivalry and fighting between these traditions of the Kalachakra, and so they wanted to really separate them as much as possible and have their own name. That's what happened. So if you add up, if you see that the names of these teachers is all jumbled up, then when you take the names of these kings, because there's this name of 25 kings, well, then saying, that it's 25 years exactly for each king, well, you can't rely on that either. So the teaching of Kalachakra, we know that that's certain. We have it. We have the teachings. We have the names. But if we're going to rely on the teachers, the number of teachers and the names of the teachers to calculate when the apocalypse is going to happen, that's not going to work out. In the same way, if you take the number of 25 kings and you calculate 25 years or whatever for each of them, you're not going to be able to get to the apocalypse is going to happen in 400 years. I don't believe that at all. I believe Obama's the Antichrist. I believe his defeat is the apocalypse, and I think it's now. It is now. So that's the thing. That's the last thing I had to say. So I'm going to give over the microphone to this article. You're going to come and read this article, and I hope that we're going to be talking to you people on the comments, and I hope that you people are going to come and join us as warriors of the apocalypse, and that we're going to be able to spread this message very much all over to the whole world, and that we can clear the whole thing with Obama up, prove that he is the Antichrist, prove that makes him also the Antichrist for the Buddhists, and that all together we can have a strong message, get it out to the world, and clear up all the dark misunderstandings, which are about Kalachakra, about also interpreting apocalypse prophecy in Christianity too. Bring this all together and clear this up so that people can figure out clearly what this is all about. Okay, see you people soon. Bye-bye.